Elle says, have you ever met anybody with a B12 deficiency? No, I haven't, because B12 doesn't exist.
There is now a clique of vegans that believes that vitamin B12 doesn't even exist and that we don't need to supplement it. One even wrote a book about it. This is dangerous, and their advice could kill people if they follow suit. Vitamin B12 was identified in the 1940s. This came after the identification of pernicious anemia, a potentially fatal condition characterized by a type of anemia with enlarged blood cells and degeneration of the spinal cord. Researchers in the early 1900s found that feeding liver to these patients could dramatically improve their condition, and this led to the isolation and identification of vitamin B12 by two separate research groups. Now, pernicious anemia is an autoimmune condition in which cells in our stomach that help us to absorb vitamin B12 are destroyed. However, B12 deficiency can also be caused by other conditions affecting absorption or by just not consuming enough, which could be the case for vegans who don't supplement or consume fortified foods because B12 is really only concentrated in animal foods and supplements. And in addition to what was mentioned previously, B12 deficiency can result in a wide range of symptoms. These include fatigue, numbness and tingling, memory loss, confusion, or even death. This is because B12 is involved in DNA synthesis and the synthesis and repair of myelin, which insulates our nerves. It turns out DNA and nerves are pretty important. And some of the strongest evidence that B12 deficiency is very real is that giving oral B12 supplements or B12 injections can reverse these symptoms if done promptly. But the longer that the nerve-related symptoms are there, the less likely it is to be fully reversed. So let's prevent that in the first place. And like he mentioned, in today's day and age, you may not have actually met somebody with a serious B12 deficiency, but that's largely because of widespread supplementation and fortification in foods like plant-based milks and cereals. Avoiding those altogether is dangerous for vegans. But it's also not a vegan-specific issue. B12 supplements are often recommended for elderly regardless of their diet because our ability to digest and absorb B12 declines with age. And it's not uncommon for animal feed to be supplemented with vitamin B12 either. This is partially because the soil that's used to grow their food is often depleted in cobalt, which is needed to produce B12. Now, regarding the author of the anti-B12 book. A friend of mine who was in contact with her several months ago suggested that she speak with me about this topic, but once she found out it was me on the other end, she declined. I also had a back and forth with her on his post, and she again declined a debate, and he even went so far as to say that debate is pointless here. Which I found pretty ironic because his content is almost exclusively just him debating people on veganism. So I'm going to call this what it is. It's cult-like behavior, and it not only stands to hurt people, but can hurt the animals. The moment that somebody follows their advice for long enough to end up in the hospital or worse, it's going to be on the news. And the headlines are going to read, "Veganism kills," even though the problem was they were talked out of taking one of the cheapest supplements on the planet. A vegan diet can absolutely be incredibly healthy if you don't follow this kind of nonsense. So yeah, vegans, let's stop this behavior.